All right, guys, we've got some major and massive information coming for the Nintendo Switch 2. We got some rumors dropping through as well. So I wanted to go over a number of different things and the strategy that Nintendo is going to be employing for the Nintendo Switch 2, because this system is launching very soon. We are about 3 weeks away as the time that I'm recording, so things are starting to heat up. So let's go ahead and first start off with the big news that potentially the D-pad, one of the biggest banes for people on the Nintendo Switch 1, the Pro Controller, apparently that is fixed, according to someone that has some hands-on time with that sweet Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller. Shoutouts to my man Stealth. He actually talked about this on Twitter. It's starting to be spread in some other places. And apparently, the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller D-pad is fixed, according to someone who had some hands-on time with it at the Switch 2 experience in Amsterdam. So, this is great news if it's true. And the issue with it before is that it wouldn't always register like the best input overall. Some people had a problem with the D-pad when they played the game. I never really used the D-pad as much, so I didn't really notice it as much as others, but it's been something that people have talked about quite a bit in terms of it being a problem with the Nintendo Switch 1 and the Pro Controller. So apparently this is fixed. So on the Reddit discussion, this person said, so yesterday I got to test out everything from the Switch 2 in an Amsterdam event, but there was one detail that no one had really talked about yet, and that is the D-pad of the Switch 2 Pro Controller. I played some Tears of the Kingdom with the Pro Controller. I got to the menu and started rocking the D-pad to test any missed inputs, and absolutely nothing. They fixed the D-pad. So yeah, this would be massive if true, because that was one of the major issues with the Nintendo Switch Pro Controllers. People love the Pro Controller. They love the fact that it's got great battery life, 40 hours plus. It's got a nice feel to it. It's got nice sticks overall. The button placement's pretty good as well. There's a lot of good things. Some people don't like the digital triggers at the top. I do. I'm not a big shooting and racing fan, so I don't really need the analog. It just takes longer to press the button when you're playing like a fighting game, an RPG, or action adventure game, or a platforming game. But yeah, either way, this one's going to also have digital triggers with the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller. But yeah, if they fix the D-pad, no missed inputs on top of the smooth gliding sticks, the same 40-hour battery life, the back paddles, this is going to be one of the best controllers of all time, and definitely the best modern controller, in my opinion, that you have when it comes down to it, just because of all the different things that you can do. And we're talking about like non-super elite $200 or $150 type of controller. This is the base one overall in terms of things. Nintendo does not have a super elite controller overall. So I do think that that's going to be pretty good. Like, this is definitely a good thing overall. And from when I first saw that controller and what they were doing with it, it is pricey. It's like 90 bucks or something like that. It is a pricey controller, but it might be worth it. I know I had to pick myself up one. Joy-Cons are great and everything, but sometimes the game calls for a bigger, better controller, and that's what the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller seems to be offering here at this point. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on that controller. Now, I did see some videos from other YouTubers that talked about how good the smooth gliding sticks are and other aspects of the controller, but nobody really mentioned what's going on with that D-pad. So this is the first confirmation, or more like first discussion, on how good that D-pad could be with this controller. So absolutely good news on that front, but it's also good news for all the people that are not subscribed to the channel. They're gonna hit that subscribe button. So go ahead and hit that sub button if you're enjoying the content, hit that like button, and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop them. Let's go ahead and jump into the next massive information here for the Nintendo Switch 2 coming up, and that is a big rumor from Necro Felipe over there, University Nintendo. He is talking about potentially a big Arc System Works developed Unreal Engine 5 Nintendo Switch 2 game. That would definitely be big, but it would actually line up with what I've been saying about what the Nintendo Switch 2 could bring to the market because of what the Nintendo Switch 1 did in Japan, and overall just what the Nintendo Switch 1 did with the massive install base and the fan base that it has. So this is a rumor. And according to him on Twitter, I'm using the translation from Portuguese, so sorry if it's not 100% here. So it says, Arc System Works from Guilty Gear Strive is working on a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive game codenamed Watari that uses Unreal Engine 5 and could arrive in November. XOX Leak is a reputable leaker who has correctly leaked everything about Marvel Rivals. So very interesting there. Arc System Works, you guys see it right here. New game, codename Watari, target release November 25th, subject to change obviously. Engine, Unreal Engine 5, this is 0.4. Platform, Nintendo Switch 2, that is the leak. We don't know what type of game this is. Arc System Works is known for their stellar work. Guilty Gear Strive, Blaze Blue, many other fighting games, but they've also branched out and done beat 'em ups and have done other things. If they're going to be using Unreal Engine 5, they're targeting Nintendo Switch 2. This seems to be like a serious type of game, I would guess. Now, I'm not saying that this is what it's going to be, but I would guess that this would probably be some type of action RPG or RPG type of game or adventure action type of game. That's what I would guess. I think that's a great target if they're going to do something exclusive on the Nintendo Switch 2 and want to sell copies, and if it was coming out this year as well. Now, it could be a fighting game, it could be something else, but if it was a fighting game, I don't think it would be a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. Fighting games, you kind of need to have a player base, so having it exclusive to one platform doesn't really help the fighting game grow and get better and make money. So I don't think it's going to be a fighting game. I think it's definitely going to be something different outside of that, if this is true. But this would kind of fall in line with what I've said before when it comes to what we could see on the Nintendo Switch 2, because the Nintendo Switch 1 was such a massive success, but it also hit the industry by surprise. Many never planned to actually make a lot of games for it, and if it was successful, they were only planning ports. They were not planning anything unique or original or stuff that derived from the Switch first and then was put on other platforms, just because nobody felt Nintendo would be in that position to command that market. And mostly for the life of the Nintendo Switch, that was the case when it came to what third-party developers did. Now, it was a mistake, and many of them stated that it was a mistake, but we ultimately ended up getting a number of ports, smaller games, and things like that built for the system. Now, with the Nintendo Switch 2, they're obviously not going to take that chance overall, especially with the dominant position that it is in Japan. So I would expect to see third-party developers, especially Japanese ones, make games exclusive or drive games from the Nintendo Switch 2 marketing angle, and then they'll put them on other platforms as well. So if you take this into account that we're talking about, assuming that it is correct, and then you also add in a huge exclusive like Dusk Bloods into the mix, you're starting to see some of the narratives surrounding that the Nintendo systems can't get certain third-party support or big type of titles outside of what Nintendo is doing is completely shattering before the system has even launched, especially with some of the other third-party support that has already been announced, like Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, Elden Ring. You also got Cyberpunk, Split Fiction, the new 007 game is coming, and more. So things definitely seem to be changing up quite a bit here. I would definitely expect that, especially with the huge spec boost over what we saw with the Nintendo Switch 1. A lot of the newer engines, a lot of what they're doing, it's going to be easier for them to create the type of games that they want to create this time around. Nintendo hasn't really went in this realm probably since the GameCube era overall when it comes to being significantly higher spec than what they did before. Yeah, you can point out the Wii to the Wii U, but that was an issue in terms of how you actually developed for that system, the resources and certain things. The Nintendo Switch 2 is a significant, massive jump over the Nintendo Switch 1 and does a lot of different things compared to even what PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S can do. So I think it'll be a bit more attractive for certain developers that are looking to create a certain type of game. And of course, now with the, I would say, backing of the Switch name and the popularity of the Nintendo Switch and having that transfer over, I think that that could actually create more of these type of games where developers target the Nintendo Switch 2 and put it out on there, maybe even exclusive, or potentially have, hey, this is the lead platform, and then port over to other platforms. But they're really banking on most of the sales and most of the popularity being on the Nintendo Switch 2. So this is definitely exciting if it is true, but we'll have to wait and see overall. It still is a rumor. So let's go ahead and get into the next topic here about the big movement that Nintendo's having with Nintendo Switch 2s. What's going on there? We all know what happened before when it comes to Nintendo. They've had up and down with console launches. There's always been some stuff that's happened good, happened bad, whatever the case is. But it looks like Nintendo is forecasting some pretty big things with the Nintendo Switch 2, which we did go over in a video. My man Stealth rounded up the top 9 months of all the recent major platforms, and it's very interesting to see it stack up in terms of where Nintendo wants to have the sales numbers for. So, for example, Nintendo, in the first 9 months, this is their forecast of 15 million Nintendo Switch 2 systems. Now, when you stack that up to the first 9 months of the Nintendo Switch, it's actually above that, 14.86 million. That's what the Nintendo Switch 1 did. If you stack that up to the PlayStation 5, that did 13.4 million. Against the PlayStation 4, that did 10 million. And against the Xbox Series, that did 8 million. So many analysts have called out like, hey, that 15 million is a bit conservative considering what's going on with the pre-orders, considering the anticipation and hype. And obviously Japan is completely dominant in that range. There's not really any competition there too much from other dedicated systems. If there is competition, it really comes from the mobile sector and free-to-play sector and stuff like that overall. But when it comes to dedicated systems, the Nintendo Switch is dominant there and will be dominant there. So that's why some have said, wait a minute, this is a little bit of an underestimation here, but I do think it stacks up pretty well. The first 9 months, it's more than all these other systems. The PlayStation 5, you couldn't find one. There was a chip shortage though, and there was absolutely stock issues with the PlayStation 5. I think the PlayStation 5 could have sold way more than 13.4 million if they didn't have those stock issues, the chip shortage, and COVID wasn't wreaking havoc on things in terms of supply lines and all of that. So I do feel that the Nintendo Switch 2 is accurately predicted or forecasted. Nintendo went a bit conservative, but you have to, because they are concerned about different things like the tariff situation, where it's causing families to not have as much money to buy games and systems and all that. The Nintendo Switch 2 is $100 more than the most expensive model of the Nintendo Switch 1 with the Nintendo Switch OLED. So there's absolutely some concern there. There's concern with the game prices as well. Donkey Kong Bonanza being $70, obviously Mario Kart World, if you're buying that separately outside of the bundle where you can get it for $50 for a $500 bundle, it's $80 for that. So there's definitely some concern about not being able to purchase some of this stuff overall because of the tariff situation and how the tariffs are causing other products to rise up in price here in the US and even worldwide. Things affect everything. So we'll just have to wait and see how this stacks up. But I do think that the core base of Nintendo, the people that actually buy the system, the biggest fan base are people from their 20s to their 40s, and that fan base has been itching, has been hungry, has been waiting for a new system. That's something that we do know. We have been waiting for a new system to come out, and the games that are looking really awesome as well. There's a lot of games that are looking really good. So I do think that that base of core fans that bought the Nintendo Switch 1, that they show that by their demographics that are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, they're going to be going out there and buying it. We've had 8 years to save up to get this system, or you can trade in different things to get it. So I absolutely see that base rushing out there and them hitting that goal. But Nintendo is still being a bit conservative on that, and I think it makes sense overall considering everything when it comes to the market. And speaking of the market and what Nintendo is going to do, let's talk about the plans that they have. So yes, the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be out there. It's coming out soon, right? But what are they going to do to actually push to that 15 million? Well, Nintendo now states that they are going to be spending a record, for them at least, approximately 966 million in advertising for the next fiscal year for the Nintendo Switch 2. Huge push. That's the biggest that they've ever done. Daniel Ahmed charted this when it comes to expenses and everything for Nintendo's advertising, and this is the biggest that they've ever done. Nearly $1 billion in advertising overall, a huge year-on-year 62% spend compared to what they've done before. And yeah, there's Times Square that they're doing, there's NBA that they're doing, they have the Seattle Mariners patches, there's commercials, there's all sorts of stuff. They're out here hiring Paul Rudd. I saw an Australian commercial with some celebrities and stuff. So they're definitely pushing this thing to get the name out. You want to make sure that you have the proper advertising for this system. One of the problems that we've seen before in the past with Nintendo's advertising is that it wasn't effective or big enough for the launch of the system. But the biggest thing, I think that more like the easiest thing that you can do would be to have the games to market the system. If you have the games, you can market the system. Mario Kart World is a great bundle in game. It's a great game to have available right there at launch. People know Mario Kart. People have been playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for a long time. So the fact that it's like, okay, here we go. We've got the next thing, the next big Mario Kart game right there at launch is very important for the success of the system. Obviously, having this sprinkled in third-party support is good for the hardcore gamers as well. Having a game like Donkey Kong Bonanza come out the next month is also really good. And also having those updates, the backwards compatibility, you can tell families, hey, you can transfer your stuff, save it in the server, or transfer it directly to the next system and trade in your system as well. So doing all of these things, it's going to help when it comes down to it, to help the adoption rate of people get to the new system. And Nintendo's going to have to spend quite a bit in order to get people to get onto the new system, especially if they're not the hardcore gamers that are tapped into everything that's happening online. So this big marketing spend is definitely warranted if you want to have this Nintendo Switch 2 system start out as strong as they want it to have, with 15 million units in the first 9 months or so. So what do you guys think when it comes to everything that we discussed here with the massive news with Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG news and more right here on screen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.